was fun. All right, well, I think we can get started. People will join us during the hour we have together. And of course, lots of folks will watch this after the fact as a recording, which is perfectly all right as well. For those of you who are joining us at this moment, my name is Ryan Catherwood, and I am a consultant and engagement strategist with Protopia and Chris Marshall Advancement Consulting. It's great to be with you today to talk about one of my very, very favorite topics. It is a topic that, I really think began to be more of a thing in post-recession years in 2008-9. I remember John Hill at LinkedIn was traveling the country to talk about LinkedIn and LinkedIn groups. And then along came other types of network technology and all different types of virtual strategies. And I think alumni career services as a field has really grown and blossomed. So the point of the webinar today is to talk about where we're headed next. We're gonna have a conversation. We do have some questions prepared, but we are happy to deviate from those questions, answer your questions at any time. So please don't be shy about plugging those into the chat or the Q&A. Jeremy is telling me we overlapped at UVA, which is awesome. We're gonna have to talk about that. So we'll go ahead and get started. Let me welcome my fabulous guests for today. We don't have any long bios to wind up on. Gloria Ko is the Senior Director of Alumni Career Engagement at UCLA. Thank you for joining us, Gloria. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Awesome. Allison McWilliams, you and I have had a chance to chat a couple of times prior to today, but you currently serve as the Assistant Vice President for Mentoring and Alumni Personal and Career Development at Wake Forest University. So very, very thoughtful title. Thanks for joining us.
You think so? It changes periodically, but yes, thank you. Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here.
Awesome. And of course, last but definitely not least, glad to have my friend Pat Fligge joining us from Temple University. Pat is the Director for Temple Professional Networks. Pat, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Ryan. Excited to be here.
Cool. Well, Allison, we've got the first question in the hopper for you. You work in actually a unique unit at Wake Forest University. Could you share more about how engaging alumni in the career space is organized at Wake and what that alignment has meant for the Office of Personal and Professional Development in the school's overarching alumni engagement strategy? So you guys have a little bit of a bifurcated model, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of, I would say, sort of emerged over time in that way. So I'm a Wake alum. And was hired in 2010 to come back to Wake to start our Mentoring Resource Center, which sits, as does the Alumni Personal and Career Development Center, within our Office of Personal and Career Development. So that is our career office on our campus. Prior to that, it had been called Career Services. And then when my boss, Andy Chan, was hired in a year before me, we kind of revamped that vision and that model, and as a lot of schools have done since, right, went in deep on this whole idea of not just finding the first job, but how do we really develop kind of the whole person and think about making people employable for life. And so the mentoring piece that I was hired to do, a lot of that is very student focused, very campus focused. And then after a few years being here, I sort of saw a need, and through a lot of conversations with Andy, we started doing some things in this alumni space. And so prior to that, and still existing today, we have an Office of Alumni Engagement, which sits within our advancement office. And they do all the things that you think of an Office of Alumni Engagement doing, right? They do a lot of the connecting of alumni back to campus, obviously homecoming and reunions and things of that nature, a lot of the social engagement. We have our motto here at Wake Forest is Pro Humanitate, so there's a lot of service-focused work that happens, and obviously sit within a team that is very focused on development and fundraising. And then within our career office, our career team, our employer relations team, have always had a high focus on engaging alumni as employers and, connecting alumni to our students and helping them in those pathways along the way. But what we weren't doing was really helping our alumni with their careers. And so that's where we developed this Alumni Personal and Career Development Center. It has officially been in existence since about 2017, but we started doing that work really around 2012, in a very informal fashion, and then got more organized over time. And so I'm one of the few groups, myself and my team, that really works across students, faculty, staff, and alumni. And with alumni, it's really from that point of graduation on, and with a high focus on first 5 years out up to about first 10 years out, although we support all of our alumni. But what we realized early on and through a ton of research is that first transition point was kind of the highest pain point, the highest need point. And so if we could go in deep there and really helping our alumni kind of get those first 5 years right, that we would be really kind of setting them, putting them in a good place to move forward. And so now, all of these places work in partnership with one another and great collaboration with each other.
That's great. It's a unique alignment. It depends on every university to sort of organize alumni engagement in the professional space that way that fits their organization. You've actually, Gloria, at UCLA, been doing a bit of reorganizing, rethinking when it comes to how to deploy alumni career services, alumni career engagement. At the university, we had Julie Sina on another podcast that I host called Alumless, and she was sharing more about a new model that's around life stages, right? And a content-driven, content-focused model. What has that kind of meant for you and alumni career services connected to that life stages model?
Well, for us, it's actually really right in line with what we've been working on for the last, 4 years. We actually, as you could see with the name Alumni Career Engagement, it's different than Alumni Career Services. We have over 500,000 alumni. If we were to call ourselves Alumni Career Services, there was no way we could probably fulfill that promise of providing services for all of our alumni, especially, even with our team. There's still limited resources. And so for us, we really wanted to put that, sense of ownership, having it be a shared ownership, having alumni engaged in their own career and also in the career, space for other Bruins, whether that's students or alumni as well. And so really wanting to change that name from services to engagement was critical for us in what we were trying to do on our team. Our team at UCLA, we are in the Alumni Association, and so we are not part of the Career Center, which is actually housed in Student Affairs at UCLA. And so they really are serving undergraduate and graduate students. And so for our office, we're engaging alumni in the professional journeys of our students, bringing them into the classroom, shepherding them if they're looking to hire students, and also engaging them with the Career Center if they want to do that. But we also have our mentor program that we house within our office, our alumni mentor program, and other, different tools we'll talk about today. But for us, especially with this new strategic plan, aligning it with what we're calling the Bruin Promise, and that our alumni association can walk with our alumni throughout their whole life, and that we are, actively looking to provide content and engagement opportunities throughout their lifespan. And so, we even are, as we're thinking about our Bruins, what Allison is saying, yes, that first 10 years is critical and wanting to do more for that space. But then also for our alumni, we're finding even when they are 20, 30 years out, they still need guidance. They need that connection with other Bruins who are doing it. We recently just had a Retiring the Concept of Retirement webinar, and that actually was so popular because our alumni, even at ages 50 and over, are still deciding what they want to do with their career. And so, I think we're really on our team, we're really leaning into that of how do we provide content that can engage alumni throughout their lifespan, and being able to, really work with our alumni throughout that time.
I saw an interesting stat the other day that said, most successful entrepreneurs are over the age of 50 when they get started. And, it's another example of different stages of our lives. We assume, someone would start a business earlier, perhaps, or someone would be looking for work later. And so it's interesting to program, but specifically zero in on that graduation gap area, right? Where a student could graduate from the university and essentially fail to connect their professional success back to the university because they've not been engaged well enough. And Pat, you've been in your role for the last 10 months or so, and you're essentially a one-person team, right? Living in the area of alumni engagement in the professional space at Temple. How have you been thinking about establishing partnerships across campus and making determinations about how best to spend your time as a sort of a business of one there?
Yeah, this is a great question. Temple's a big place. And so first, I hope I'm pursuing this the right way, because you're right, as a small team, finding those collaborators is key. So I think about my work in two big domains, similar to what my colleagues here have been talking about, providing that career management support, and then also supporting career volunteer programs where our alumni are providing their expertise to students or less experienced alums. So on the providing support side, the partnerships I've sought out are with those that are doing similar work, so we can coordinate. For Temple, that's our business school and our university career center, who both offer some services to our alumni, particularly to our young alums, since that is such a critical time period. And it's important that we work in concert and that we don't duplicate efforts, or at least that we're intentional about what that looks like. So the things I'm thinking about with those partnerships are, can I lift up their messages or recontextualize their resources for different audiences with their permission? So for instance, repurposing career center content for an alumni audience where that can sort of fit. But the other notion driving this partnerships angle is, well, who are the audiences that I think are most likely to need this support? Who might have nonlinear careers that are looking to reinvent themselves, right? So I'm working to establish a strong relationship with our College of Liberal Arts, but then I'm also thinking about things like, well, what if I was an engineering grad from Temple and I wanted to do something very different than engineering? Where am I going to look, and how are they going to find this content that we can provide? On the volunteer engagement front, I'm just beginning that work. I'm starting with, what are the strong programs that are already well established at Temple and what makes them successful? And my hope is that we can build a roundtable where all those career volunteer managers are meeting to support one another, maybe help emerging programs grow, but then also centralizing some of that data collection and figuring out, can we provide resources from the central office that maybe amplify everything else that's going on? For instance, we've got people growth. So are there folks that aren't leveraging that technology at Temple that we can help them use it? And to help manage this time in my effort, the thing I'm really trying to remember is, all right, well, how can I not twist arms, but sort of start with who's most willing to collaborate and maybe needs a little less convincing at the front end?
I think that's a great motto, is, focus. First rule of management, or one of the rules of management, is spend more time with your best people, right? And, when you have collaborators who are eager to be partners in different initiatives, it feels like a good place to be focused, with so many opportunities to grow in the professional space on any given campus. But Allison, thinking about how Wake Forest alumni are opting to engage with your office, are they seeking career education? You mentioned mentoring programs. You were specifically brought in for that. Do you have to convince them to be mentors? Are you just filtering? How does it work? How are you focused, and how do some of the tools factor in for you?
Yeah, so a little bit of a two-part answer, and I won't go deep on the mentoring things. I think it's a longer conversation, but one thing I will say is that so we don't run formal mentoring programs out of my office. And so we go deeper into thinking about, how do we skill up people to build those relationships for themselves? And I can speak further about that later. But yeah, I think, obviously, like I said before, right? Like everybody, we have a high priority on engaging our alumni around hiring our students and supporting them, doing informational interviews, all of those things. And a lot of that sits, like I said, with our career team, our employer relations team. But that is both a value add to us, but I think, a big value add to them as well, a way that they feel like they can stay engaged with the university. And when I think about it, they're looking for three things from us. So they're looking for, us to help them get connected to each other, for their ability to get connected to us as they see us as like content expertise, and then being connected back to the university as well, right? And so when they're looking for that connection with us, it's when, they're looking for guidance on, career decisions. I love what Gloria was saying, right? Yeah, like even with the people who are looking at kind of that third act moment of, it's kind of all of the same questions of who am I, what matters to me, how do I align those things with the choices and decisions that I'm making. For our youngest alums, stepping out into a world that feels very uncertain, and maybe taking a job that they thought was going to be amazing, and then suddenly discovering that work is work, and maybe it's not quite as amazing as we thought it was going to be. And so how do I figure out what job number 2 might look like, or how does this connect to who I am? And so it's a lot of those bigger picture kind of questions, and so both kind of in a one-on-one, and we have some places on our website where we try to ease that process for people who really need, like, I need someone to answer a question right now. But then also thinking about how we create content, develop programs, and to Pat's point, right, not constantly reinvent the wheel. But, one thing that we decided pretty early on is, we don't need to recreate the internet, that there is a ton of information available out there. And so what they really need help on is discerning what information is the information I should be paying attention to, and how do I access it? And for those who want to go deeper, that there's some opportunities to go deeper on that. We do provide career coaching. We provide free career coaching for life. We will, review resumes, do all that traditional stuff, but we also, that's not a high need. I think when we first started this, people were really worried that, like, oh my gosh, thousands of people are going to show up and want this. And first of all, well, that's a great problem to have, and we will solve that problem if that happens. But it actually also hasn't really happened in the ways that some people had a little concerns about in the beginning. Yeah. So.
Awesome. Well, let's take a quick break, engage our audience as we are engagement professionals. And we have a poll that I am about to hit launch on that's looking for you all who are joining us live to suggest where would you like to be more focused as alumni career engagement professionals? What do you see as the most significant opportunities that you would like to focus on? Polls are fun to watch grow. All right. How are we doing? I think it looks like interesting that there are, I think the top choice there is creating professional experiences, right? Work shadow programs, interactive activities involving alumni, right, perhaps, or other members of the community, informational interviews, micro internships. I think that's a really interesting sort of place for the group to land on, and certainly an area where I get excited about our line of work, where some of the opportunities are. But let's circle back to you, Gloria, and we'll talk about some of the tools. I think increasing the use of digital network platform or mentoring tools was not necessarily one where there is they saw the most focus, area to put focus. Let's talk a little bit about UCLA One, and let's talk about how you are engaging with that technology. Actually, I've skipped ahead in my script a little bit, got myself all moving forward to a whole new section. But now that we're talking about technology, let's move forward on that.
Yeah, no, UCLA One is our online professional networking platform. We partner with Graduate on that tool. And, it is one of those things where I am constantly learning, and this is a great lesson in learning about being in the tech industry, because you are also fighting for user acquisition. You are also teaching and marketing and also building ways to drive engagement. And it in itself is work, right? And so for many of my colleagues at universities and institutions thinking that, hey, I'm just gonna set up this platform and people are just gonna go, that is not how it works. Like, there are ways, you have to really think critically about what it is you want people to do on this platform, and also what they're going to get out of this experience. I kind of see it as being a good host of a party. If you just open a door and like don't even provide food or music, people are going to go and then they're going to leave because it's not fun to be there, right? And so you really have to be a host in a way of providing what it is, like, what is it that you're doing on this platform? And we've had to rethink UCLA One many a time since we've had this platform, because we really needed to figure out what is it that people want to do. And we are not Facebook. We cannot compete with that. We are also not LinkedIn, because we can't compete with that either. LinkedIn is great for what it is. And so what is it that we could provide? And to be honest, what we could provide in this is that UCLA connection. It's a warm ask. And so we wanted to make the platform very action oriented. So we made it so that people can see if alumni can offer informational interviews, they can offer resume critiques, they can offer mock interviews, they can offer, like we're talking about, work shadowing opportunities and professional experiences. And we wanted to make it very tangible, because we realized when we made it very broad, people would ask, can I ask for this? And when we thought, of course you can. But then we realized it's very, of course we understood that, but our users didn't. And so we needed to make it very explicit that they could ask for these things. And we have found that people who are asking on UCLA One are getting more of a response than they maybe were getting on LinkedIn, because in LinkedIn, it's the whole world of professionals and you're competing with a whole world of people asking for, whether it's an informational interview or a connection. But on UCLA One, it's more of an exclusive experience. And also people have already raised their hands and said they want to help. And so that's what we really had to fine tune. What is it that UCLA One is offering in the landscape of technology? Our alumni mentor program is, facilitated on UCLA One as well. Our students it's a student initiated, alumni powered program, we call it, because students ask, they have to make the request, they have to put themselves out there, and they have agency to say, yes, I would love to be mentored by you. And our alumni also have agency and say, yes, I would like to work with you. And so UCLA One offers that opportunity for both students and alumni to connect directly with one another, rather than having a staff member be in the middle doing the matching. However, of course, our staff is there to troubleshoot, to have the difficult conversations that may be needed. Of course, we're there for that, but the tool allows us to really hit more people. Yeah,
that's awesome. Thank you. And you mentioned that is a piece of the puzzle as it relates to working with the Career Center, I suspect, as it's a student connected organization, or student focused opportunities to connect with alumni in the platform. Pat, at Temple, you mentioned earlier in the webinar that you have a people grove at the university. How are you thinking about success of People Grove? What does that look like? And how are you going to sort of select low-hanging fruit to sort of focus on developing that strategy around the technology?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I want to underline everything Gloria said, because that was really insightful and all really good points. So I hope to add maybe a new spin on some of what she just offered. So I think at base level, right, you need to have students and alumni there. And then second, when they use the platform, something has to happen, right? And part of that is being that good host of creating the right circumstances. I think this is hard to do at large scale, right? I don't think it's if you build it, they will come. So to me, the low-hanging fruit, the important pieces that you have to get moving is, can you build more of a franchise model, right? Are small pockets using this system to manage their programs? Can I get those volunteer managers or different offices that interact with students and alumni or faculty to adopt this technology into their process, right? Can this help them sort of solve a problem they have? Because when you have a platform like this, like we're talking about here, you're asking someone to change their digital behavior. And I think that's really hard to do. So this thing has to be relevant. And I think it has to be really easy for them to use. I remember at a previous institution when we were looking at buying a similar technology, an alum in a tech space said, look, people aren't excited about the platform. They're excited about the engagement opportunity. You want this technology to be as thin as possible. And that advice has really stuck with me. So for instance, at Temple, our People Grow platform is really helpful to some of our business schools mentoring programs because they needed a tool to help match people at scale and then get those initial conversations off the board. And I think that's a really good example of how you make these tools successful. Is it's not, all right, it's there and now everyone can just go in and use it, but how can I find those people that can be force multipliers and sort of take their 10, 20, 15 person program, run it on that and maybe grow it twice its size or maybe a little bit beyond that. But it's sort of working behind the scenes to empower those different volunteer managers. Say, here's a solution that might help you with something that you've already got operating or that you've been trying to grow.
Yeah. I mean, built into this whole question, Allison, is the one of mentoring, right? I think the activity that we see in a network platform is around loose connections turning into mentors, maybe more organized mentoring programs that are facilitated all sort of in this one particular technology. There's several out there on the market. How do you think about technology sort of in the mentoring space, maybe mentoring in general? Is that what alumni and students want? Do they want mentors? Do alumni still want a mentor even after they've graduated? And maybe you can just sort of share some of your thoughts around mentoring and then sort of work in the notion of the technology that's out there that facilitates those types of relationships.
Yeah. And I love, just to build on Gloria and Pat, because there's just such great thoughts there. I have very strong thoughts on this topic, which Ryan knows. And I think people think they want mentoring and people think they want to mentor. And I say this as someone who considers themselves an expert in mentoring and like a strong, like I always say, like I'm the mentoring girl, like I'm a firm believer in the value of mentoring. And when it's done right. And that when it's done right, it is a very deep level, deep committed, intentional relationship, right? And so what most people want and what most people actually need is more, I need connections. I need a stronger network, right? I need someone to give me advice in this moment around this thing. I need someone to sponsor me for something. I need someone who's going to open a door for me. And all of those things can be part of a mentoring relationship, but they also can be independent of it. And so I think particularly recently, mentoring has become super popular and we sort of hold it up as like, well, everybody needs mentoring and everybody should be a mentor. And I think, yes, everybody does need mentoring and everybody can be a mentor, but it's not always what needs to happen in that moment. And I think especially when we're thinking about alumni to student, but also alumni to alumni, there's real potential to do harm, right? When we're setting up expectations for something that may fall apart or that may not even happen in the first place. And so the other thing about it is like, I feel like college is kind of one of the last times that we sort of hand people a person and say, like, here's your mentor, like on a platter. And the rest of your life, you really have to figure out how do you develop these relationships for yourself. And so I always say this is skill development for life. And we need to be training our students, teaching our students, also our faculty and staff, and also certainly our alumni, right? Like, how do you seek out these relationships for yourself? How do you build these relationships, these networks for yourself? And so I'm much more interested at Wake Forest in us doing that work than us actually, running some big, program where everybody is handed someone. I think these tools can be phenomenal resources when they're used well. And it sounds like Pat and Gloria are right on target with it, right? I think a lot of people think, what often happens is someone has a very small mentoring program and it's very successful. It might have 50, 100 people in it. and someone is encouraging them to scale it. You know, like if you can reach 100 people, why can't you reach everybody? And they realize, wow, these mentoring programs are a lot of work. And so if I can just get a piece of software, it'll do all the work for me. And, you know, to Gloria's point, right? Like it, you know, it's having the party and having no food and having no music and having no entertainment, you know? And so, you know, like there is a lot of active work that has to be done in an ongoing way with these platforms. We're a really big LinkedIn school, as I'm sure everybody is, you know, at this point. And so, you know, LinkedIn is free for the most part. And so I've sort of gone deeper on that side. Like I'd much rather sort of teach my students how to reach out to people through that. And build those relationships, but also providing some other avenues for connection, you know, where are the places that we can sort of facilitate some connection opportunities.
The network platforms are very interesting, and they've been around for about a decade. And one of the interesting things about them is on the alumni engagement side, it's often the way that every university points towards to say, this is how you can get involved. Right? By opting into this program, which you can do from anywhere, from any time, right? This is your opportunity. And then of course you sort of wait around and as an alum and hope to be reached out to, right? Which can often, that dead time between opting in and receiving that mentorship can often be sort of a challenge, and maybe you forget that you've done it. And so what are some ways that after an alum has joined, you know, UCLA One or People Grove or your network platform, that you keep them participating, even if a student hasn't reached out to them? Because it strikes me as, Gloria, you mentioned the idea of hosting a party, but it's an ongoing party. You know, it's one that runs every day of the week, every day of the year, if it's sort of been, you know, a successful one.
Well, you know, I think what you're saying is, you know, when they volunteer, they raise their hand and their hand is raised and no one's picking, you know, I think that's definitely an experience that we're mindful of. Those that don't have mentees. So recently we just finished our fall recruitment for our mentor program. We had about 700 alumni who said yes. And then we had over 1,000 mentor-mentee pairs that were formed from them. However, we still have about 300 alumni that didn't get a mentee. So that means we had about, you know, 400, 500 alumni that said yes to multiple, but we still have alumni that didn't get selected. And so actually they're our first go-to for any other requests. We get requests from the Career Center who are looking for kind of one-day mentorship programs. We send them invitations for that. We also have different programs that the Alumni Association does, from the Entertainment Networking Night, Interview with the Bruin, and also students who are student groups who are looking to invite alumni. They're our first go-to because, again, they've said yes already and they're looking to get engaged. And, you know, by acknowledging, yes, you haven't gotten that mentee yet, but I wanted to send you this invitation because you seem like someone that wants to engage with our UCLA community. And so again, we also push the mentor program all year long. So just because they didn't get selected this time around doesn't mean that they won't, because we have students who are like, I cannot do this right now in fall quarter. It's available for you all year long. And so for our alumni who don't get selected, you know, we're looking for ways to, you know, can we feature them at the top of a search because, you know, they don't have someone yet. And so, you know, it is, you know, very important that we continue to engage the alumni who have said yes and find ways to work with them throughout the year. Exactly. Like you said.
That's awesome. That's great. So let's this is a webinar. We've promised to predict the future of you know, some of our trends. And our next question is about, we're going to tackle LinkedIn because I think it's worthy of a thoughtful discussion when it comes to, you know, how we're moving forward. And Allison alluded to that. But if we're just sort of riffing here, ladies and gentlemen, you know, what is the future of network platform opt-in technology? Does it continue to grow and flourish? Does it continue to, you know, change and evolve? And if so, you know, what's a thought that might be a way in which the type of technology that supports this type of scalable alumni connection activity, what might be a thought to which that this whole space might change?
I'll go first. I think, especially when it comes to engagement on LinkedIn, LinkedIn is a leader in this space. And so I think making sure our alumni and our students are LinkedIn proficient and they understand how to utilize the platform is key. So, I think that oftentimes too, people are nervous about what to write and they don't necessarily maximize the platform for what it could be for them. And so I think, for us, just because we have UCLA One doesn't mean we ignore other platforms. The Career Center at UCLA uses Handshake. And so, the career services environment is always going to have multiple technology and platforms that people are going to use. And so I think being nimble and being able to educate folks on what you use those for is key, because, ultimately you can't just have one, because it's not always going to be the right fit for somebody. But I do think, when it comes to LinkedIn as well, when it comes to groups, even a LinkedIn group, understanding how do we engage in the group? How are we going to moderate? Are we moderating, or is it just kind of everyone just post? And then, if there is any behavior there that you need to manage, you do. But also, how do you get people to comment on each other, and how do you can create that environment that it's not just a one-way conversation, but it's two. I don't have the perfect answer, but I think a lot of it is just having good responses, because I think also in the professional space, people are a little bit more guarded. It's not just like a Facebook group, like a buy nothing group where people are just going for it, right? It's a little bit, people are going to be a little bit more thoughtful about how they engage. And I think asking people to be brave and courageous in this space is key as well.
Yeah. Pat, what do you think?
I really like what Gloria just said there too, especially about these tools are all means to an end, right? And that's something I've been thinking about as a new person coming into my role, is how are we making sure that we're positioning this Temple professional network brand as the thing that lives in the minds of our students and alumni. And then once you land there, we'll direct you to the right resources and sort of teach you, here's how you use it, right? Right now, we've got People Grove and Career Shift and JobScan. We've got this suite of tools that can change and evolve over time, but the Temple brand is going to be stable. So if that's sort of what we always hold on to, and then we say, all right, here's how you interpret these tools, here's the problems they solve for, here's the best way to navigate that. That's sort of how I think about it in broad strokes. Specific to sort of your point about network platforms and LinkedIn, man, if LinkedIn could give me the data of who are the Temple alums connecting with each other, like on the back end that a Graduate or a People Grove does, that's something I would pay for, right? I think that's something we'd all be really interested to see, if we could see that kind of user behavior that these network platforms are giving us right now, but see it on LinkedIn. That would be incredibly valuable if anyone from LinkedIn is listening to this webinar at some point. And just the last thing I'll say too, just think about the content that's there. I think largely our alums are probably there for two reasons, right? They're either seeking resources or they're seeking to promote themselves in some way. So how are we giving them opportunities to engage with that, right? Are we providing the content that's helping them with their career, or curating that on our LinkedIn feeds? But then are we also giving them opportunities to promote themselves by saying, hey, here's a question. Can you answer it and pass on this advice to someone else? Can you share something that we can then reshare? So just trying to think about what's that audience there for, and how can we sort of tee them up and put that Temple brand or that university brand around it, and sort of lend a little more credibility to what they're doing.
I think that's great. Yeah. There's so much opportunity, I think, when it comes to LinkedIn. But it's almost feel like we've been sort of unable to capitalize on the same opportunity that's existed for a very long time. And if you'll, look at a university's LinkedIn presence on the web, they're posting the same comments or the posts that are on, the Facebook page and the, other, and it's about research and nostalgia-based initiatives, but they're not about the professional space, and they often don't correlate to the reasons that alumni are actually on LinkedIn in the first place, or the conversations that they're interested in having. I think, Gloria, to your point, it does require that kind of two-way, willing to have a dialogue that's unique to LinkedIn about the work world, and have alumni, help directing that. Allison, how do you think about LinkedIn in terms of, I know it represents sort of the major sort of digital technology that you use as part of your work?
Yeah, well, and I think what's nice about LinkedIn, I mean, I think to what Pat just said, right? Like, we'll see, right now it feels like LinkedIn's going to be here forever. And it's like, yeah, is Twitter going to be here tomorrow? Like, who knows, right? And so, but right now, the nice thing about LinkedIn is that they're already there, right? Like for most, I mean, there's certain pockets of alums that are not on it, but for the most part, like you're not having to ask them to opt into something else. And they're already inclined to keep their information up to date, right? And so I think those are the two things that make it really nice. And there's some user functionality on there that's really helpful, right? The way that you're able to search for people. And, so I think, listen, technology is going to constantly evolve. We need to stay up to date on it, think about how we can make the best use of the tools that we have for the right reasons, right? So how do the tools help us stay connected to our alumni? How does it help us stay informed in the ways that we need, and vice versa, right? How does it help them stay informed and connected in the ways that they need? And recognizing that, we as people haven't turned into robots yet, right? So, I think one thing that's been interesting coming out of the pandemic is, the shift away from geographical connection points, right? And so what does that mean in terms of the ways that we provide connections for people? That has to be a little bit more online. And also this deep desire for authentic and a lot of times in-person connection as a result of spending so much of our lives online right now, right? And so how do we kind of bring those two things together to sort of support each other really effectively? And so I think whether it's LinkedIn or People Grove or Protopia or something else, right? Like, is it the right tool to meet the strategic need that we have? And if so, how do we make best use of that and make sure that it is as easy and seamless and supportive of our alumni as it possibly can be?
Yeah. One of the interesting sort of aspects of the work we do is trying to leverage quality over quantity. Right? There's a lot of deep relationship building that we can do with alumni, but at the same time, we're counted on to scale engagement up. And Allison, you mentioned that sort of that notion of, do we have to push the successful 50-person mentoring project to 100 just to scale it up and say that we did, or should we just keep trying to make that 50-person mentoring program really successful? It's an important question, I think, broadly in the work that we do. What are the avenues to scale up? Gloria, as you're thinking about, contributing more engagement activity to the whole work that everyone's doing at UCLA, how are you thinking about scaling up and helping out in that way?
Well, for us, I often find that if I wanted to scale up, it's more about building awareness. I think with having the technology, we have the ability to take more, but we need more students to know about what we're doing. We need alumni to sign up. And so, I think even as it's not even in the programmatic parts, once people are signed up, a lot more of the work actually has to put on the front end of doing the outreach and awareness and building those relationships before people even, say yes, because I think they're just, with the university, our students, there's so much going on campus that so many people don't even know that you exist until they think of you or they need you. So how do we build ourselves and put ourselves into more into the student experience, or even our alumni? We have alumni who are younger, who are like, I don't have the capacity to mentor. I'll wait until I have everything figured out and then I'll come back. But how do you even build in that culture? Hey, you can mentor right where you are in whatever life stage you are, because you always have someone behind you who needs your help. And so I think a lot of it too, as we think about, having more people at the table, how do we even make sure they get to us and put the resources into the marketing and the outreach and the relationship building so that they say yes and come to our programs?
Yeah. Pat, if I can ask you, how are you thinking about scaling up at Temple, sort of I know you've been there for about a year and you're sort of thinking about the building blocks. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I think a good question that you have to ask here is, are we looking to engage a small number of people a lot, or a lot of people a little bit, sort of to your point before, Ryan, right? And I think the charge that I've been tasked with figuring out is, all right, well, how do we get more people to be aware of this, as Gloria was saying, and pay attention to our alumni career engagement content, whether that's as a volunteer or receiving support from us in some way, right? And I don't know that people are eager for more events. I don't know that you solve for this by just throwing more events on the calendar. I think we've all become more discerning with our time. So I think it does come back to a content-driven strategy. But sort of like Allison was mentioning at the beginning, it's not all creation. I think a big part of this is curation and saying, hey, here's what's important to pay attention to, and then can we track it in some way? So, if you're clicking on one article from the newsletter in every other month, hey, maybe that's what the start of an engagement journey looks like for us, right? And maybe that's how we scale it up, is just by getting this content in more places, not just the TPN channel of, Temple Professional Network channel of communications, but how is this living in all the different schools and colleges at Temple? Something that I think a lot about, specific to my university, is, are you identifying with your specific school or college, or with the big T, Temple University, or at what times are you paying attention to different places? So it might not be that you're doing more, it's just that the things you're doing are spread out through more channels. So like Gloria is saying, people are becoming more aware of it, starting to engage with it. And then there is a pipeline, right? There is sort of some sense of, right, here's where we're going next. You've received support from us. Here's a way that you can pay that forward. And here are the volunteer programs that either exist at your school or college or across the university. And so I think another part of this scaling up is being intentional about sharing information on the inside, right? And figuring out who are the people that are managing these kinds of volunteer programs or engagement programs across the university. And can we talk to one another and figure out who are we engaging with, and what else might those people be interested in? What's their menu of opportunities that they can go to next? So I know that's not a very specific answer. So I'm gonna say the excuse is that I am still in month 10, but at least that's how I'm starting to think about it at the beginning.
No, it was great. Thank you. And I wanted to ask, I think, Allison, you next, about the question of advancement, but hopefully I can broaden it out to Pat and Gloria as well, because you're both, the work you do is connected to advancement. At Wake Forest, your unit is not a part of university advancement. You have tight connectivity with that unit. My question is, do you feel a pull towards being more connected with advancement, focusing more on engaging donors, focusing more on when there is a mentoring opportunity for someone? Do you feel, should you feel like, asking a donor first is a good thing to be doing? And I sort of asked Pat and Gloria to reflect on how you see the work that we're doing as sort of a part and parcel of the donor pipeline development strategy of the broader organization.
Yeah, I mean, listen, like, we all want happy donors, right? That is certainly a big part of the work that we sort of unfortunately have to do now in higher education. One of the benefits, I think, of my office not being within advancement is that I don't have to make those explicit connections, right? And in fact, when someone from advancement reaches out and says, hey, I have this, this donor, and they really want to mentor a student, so I need you to find them a student, I can very easily say no, and say that is not the work that I do. And it's not because I don't want that person to be happy. It's because my work is about making sure that student gets what they need, right? Not keeping that donor happy. And at the same time, I am a firm believer that the work that my team is doing is so critical to demonstrating the ongoing value of higher education. I think more and more, and especially at a school like Wake Forest that is so expensive to go to, we can no longer make the case that, for $70,000, $80,000 a year, that you get a 4-year degree, right? It has to be for $70,000, $80,000 over the course of 4 years, you get a lifelong education. And we are here for that, right? Like, that has to be the case that we're making. And if we go deep into that, that is going to lead to ongoing donor engagement, right? When we're working with these younger alumni, who also, by the way, have no money to give back. But, when they see that we're showing up, on day one, and, day, 101, right? And like, we're still there to support them. They're going to be much more inclined to continue to engage with the university, to give back to the university, as opposed to if we just kind of show up and say, hey, congrats on your education, please give us money. So I just think it's critical work that we're doing as we have these ongoing conversations around what is the value of higher education, like what is the value of these degrees. So
yeah, I think it's a great conversation to be having. Pat or Gloria, how do you see the connectivity with advancement? Is the alumni career engagement strategy the long-term strategy, as it's sort of, and it will fundamentally lead to philanthropy if we do it well, or is it interconnected to the art or the philanthropy experience overall, right? Is alumni career services literally a component of the fundraising strategy?
I think for us, being engaged in your career and our investment in our alumni and their career and their professional journey, I think it's all about that relationship. Do they still have a relationship with UCLA even after they're a student? I actually can't come from student affairs, so I totally love what Allison is doing. And that's why we're so excited to chat with her tomorrow, because again, we're learning from each other, right? Like, what is working for your school? What doesn't work for us? How do we continue to iterate and grow our programs? Because we're not necessarily competing for our different alumni. But I think a lot of times with our alumni, I love working in alumni affairs because I get to have my students for their whole lifetime, not just for their 4 years at UCLA. I get to work with them, follow back with them, invite them to come to events and share their story. And so I see, working with our alumni and having, it's all part of the experience and the philanthropy experience, because to them, UCLA is all one place. They don't differentiate between our office or, a donor's office, our development office. If they have a bad experience here, they're not going to engage with someone over there, and they're not going to necessarily do it vice versa. So I think that, being front and center, having these engagement points and having it be a positive experience will only make it so that when they are in a position to give, or maybe they want to give to a scholarship because they received a scholarship, we have an internship alumni network that provides scholarships for students who have to take an unpaid internship. And so really, again, paying it forward and giving our students that professional development experience. So it's all tied together, and the ways that our alumni can make that impact, whether it's through mentorship or with a gift, to them, they don't differentiate between offices. So we need to work together, because for our alumni, we're all the same.
Yeah. Awesome. I had this thought the other day, and I'll just off the cuff remark, one way to test the sort of success of some of the technology that we have deployed is whether or not a development officer would suggest to a donor that they should use it. And have you, as the alumni side, asked the development side whether or not they are referring these types of technologies or other types of mentoring programs in the career space? Because surely, lots of those individuals would love to participate if only given the right opportunity to know about it. But is there a disconnect between what the development officer might see as a good experience for the donor versus, the different opportunities to have them be involved? Another conversation for another day. I did want to ask you guys, we do have one question. I think I'm going to reframe it. Linda Gurdon asked it, Gutton, and she was asking about alumni networks having more opportunities, right, to develop and that's true enough, right? I think bigger universities are able to sculpt more programming and create more opportunities. She asked, is there anything where they can link with other programs? And I guess I'm not sure exactly how to frame that, but maybe to talk about something you believe is fundamental to sort of what the work that you're doing, that you'd advise someone that's running a small team, Pat, or maybe as sort of a business of one of what you're doing at Temple, what do you think is sort of fundamental?
So I think alumni career services has to exist. And I know I'm preaching to the choir here when I say that, but sort of like Allison's point before, college is really expensive. And so we've got to find a way to be relevant beyond just that 4-year degree. And I think this is a really powerful way to do that for our alums, whether we're continuing to provide them with career resources when they need it, whether that's 5 years out or 15 or 20 years out, or that we're leveraging their experience, right? So I think this work is required, and if a college or university isn't creating some kind of alumni career engagement pathway, you're missing the boat, right? And I think you can decide for your institution what makes sense. Maybe a great professional network is 17 people, because that's what fits the size of your institution, and that's really valuable to those 17 people. Great. Maybe it's 1,700 because that's the size. I think regardless, our alums want to feel it as a personal experience, right? That they're having a relationship with their alma mater and with each other. So I don't know that you need to worry so much about the denominator size, and really just think, all right, this is a really powerful way that we can be continually relevant in people's lives.
Last question, and then we'll conclude things. So this is potentially a rocky economy coming up, right? There's a cliff around enrollments that's forthcoming. The waters are a little choppy. What we do tends to rise and fall with the markets and the job market particularly. As we look out over the next couple of years, where do you see the opportunities? And I suppose infused in that is, what are you passionate about at the work that you're doing in order to sort of grow your program? Sort of given the environment and the resources that you've got, what is something that you'd like to do next that you think is worthy of trying, even if you're not sure it's going to work out? That was way off. That was way off script, and probably would have been good to give you guys some time to think about that one in advance. All
right, I'll take a stab. So I would really love to have some kind of like diagnostic tool, and maybe this is something that I've got to build, or maybe there's a vendor out there who can help me. That can we position the Temple Professional Network as living in the minds of our alums, that on Sunday night, if they have the Sunday scaries because they don't want to go to work, or they're worried that there might be disruption and they need to prepare, they can come to Temple and we can help them diagnose, all right, where are you at in your career search journey? And here are the resources we have to help you, right? So it makes it super easy. But I think the key part is getting to live in their minds, right? And we're going to be one of those internet tabs that they're opening up on Sunday night, thinking about, all right, what comes next for me?
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. That was great.
I was thinking there's 2 areas that I, especially with what's going to be coming ahead, is for providing skills for those who are managers and then those who are looking for career change. And so finding ways for our alumni to help each other and connect, especially on those topics. That's actually something our team is working on. How can we create a mentor program, but for alumni? So alumni to alumni connections around specific topics or life stages or kind of change points, because there's going to be a lot of change and a lot of hardships coming ahead.
Yeah, helping alumni with career change management makes a ton of sense. Awesome. Final thought to you, Allison?
I would ditto all of that. I think, yeah. I think a lot about a scalable tool that will help, here's where I am currently, here's where I see myself going, help me figure out, how to get from point A to point B. And then also, the management thing is just, someone's got to fix it.
I'd like to see some great examples of professional alumni LinkedIn influencer programs where there's a paid group of 8 to 10 alumni who are with a planned content calendar, who are all sort of sharing each other's content and asking questions in a kind of organized way. I think that there's an opportunity there to create content and lead with content. But thank you everybody for joining us today. Pat, Allison, Gloria, thank you so much for your time and letting me do some deviations to our script. Thanks for being flexible and nimble on those responses. Everyone, thank you for joining us. We'll send a recording out to everyone who registered. And for those who didn't, but you'd like to recommend it, we'll have it up on the website too. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Bye now.
Thank you.
Thank you.